January was one heck of a reading month. I did really well in January, and honestly I thought it was going to be one of my lesser reading months, but I had so much fun with my books this month, it's not even funny. I found some new favorites. I just had the best time. This is the month where I did Booktuber favorites. I found some new favorites from that video. I also did my One Shelf at a Time series, which was so much fun. I was able to get some books off of my physical TBR. I just had the best time this month. So let's chat about everything that I read in January. First, let's talk about the stats and how I actually did in the month. I read 16 books, 7,538 pages, which is insane. I listened to around 54 hours of audio. I averaged a 3.8 rating, which for me, pretty solid. I acquired 9 books. I didn't reread anything. I did start 9 series, but I was able to complete, I think, 3 series? Yes, I was able to complete 3 series, and I read 3 or 4 diverse reads as well. So I feel like that was a very solid reading month for me stats wise. 16 books, 7,500 pages is wild, and I'm really happy with it. As far as my breakdown, how many audio versus how many physical I read, I listened to 4 audiobooks, I read 2 ebooks, I read 1 physical book, and I read a mixture of 9 books, meaning I probably did audio and ebook or ebook and physical book. My ratings breakdown, not too shabby. I did have 2 2.5 stars. I had 1 3-star, 5 3.5 stars, 4 4-stars, 1 4.5 star, and 3 5-stars in the month of January, which is absolutely insane for me. That doesn't happen. So I am beyond thrilled about the fact that I had 3 5-stars because I only had 10 all year last year. As far as my genres, I had 14 romantasy. So many romantasy. My genre blanket is just going to be a sea of beige, but that is fine. I read 1 horror book and 1 romance book. There were a couple of those that were young adult, but we're lumping them into the romantasy. So now that these stats are out of the way, let's talk about all of the books that I read in January. We're going to rapid fire these so we're not here for 400 years, but I hope you have your coffee and I hope you're sat because it may take us a little while. The first probably, what was it, 9 books? 8 books? 8 or 9 books were all for Booktuber favorites, and I love doing this video. It's one of my favorites that I do every year, especially since I usually find favorites every year, and this year was no exception. Unfortunately, the first book that I read wasn't a new favorite, but I'm hoping it will kickstart a new favorite series for me, and I read it for the Not So Indie Archive, which is the book club that Cassidy and I host over for our top 2-tier Patreon. So if you want to read a book every single month with us, go and join. The link is going to be down in the description box for you. But this month was City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. This is a chunky boy and a book that I have seen everywhere, so I was really excited to pick it up. It's compared to Crescent City, and I could absolutely see those comparisons, about Loren, who is a human in a world of all of these creatures: vampires, werewolves, demons, demon hunters. When one day a demon hunter named Darian Castle is given her as a bounty and comes after her, and she surprisingly actually has to work with him in order to try to find her friend that was taken by mistake by another group of dark slayers or demon hunters. This book I struggled with a little bit more than I wanted to. Sometimes I felt like the pacing was a little slower, although the pacing in the end ended up actually being pretty good. I really liked the world building. I liked the dark slayers aspect and how all of that shaked out and how the ending plot turned out to be, and I'm really excited for where we're gonna go in book 2. I liked Darian. I wanted to see a few more moments of him being a badass, but he definitely was badass while also being a very caring, sweet, little bit of a cinnamon roll male main character, which is not typically my preferred, so I think it took me a little time to settle in and warm up to him in that way. My main issue with this book was actually Loren. She was a little bit too everything happens around me and not taking enough responsibility, not having as much agency as I would typically prefer my female leads to have. I usually like for them to be really spunky and take charge and be kind of sassy, and she definitely is a very soft character, one that is a human, and she's like, I can't do all of this because I'm a human, but I think that she, as the book continued on, definitely started to get more of the agency that I wanted. It just took a little long for my liking for us to get there. So I'm hoping that book 2 ends up being a huge win. I actually want to try to get to it in February because I'm finding that the quicker I bury books back to back, the better I like them. This ended up getting a 3-star. Also, really quickly, side note, I'm trying to get better about my ratings this year, about how I rate things and the way that I talk about them, and so you may see me adjust ratings just a little bit from from what was in the stats, and that's just so that it reflects a little bit more about what I think of a book after I finished it, because a lot of times when I sit down to film my final vlog clip, it will be right after I finish the book, and I need to learn to sit on it a little bit before I give my ratings, let my thoughts process, and then rate the book. So this one is gonna get a 3-star, and I'm excited to continue on into the finale. Oh, let me tell you, this was Destiny Sidwell's pick for Best of the Year. Then I read Cassidy's best book. It was actually an honorable mention on hers, and it was Captive of Wolves by Eva Chase. I was so excited to finally read a book by Eva Chase. I had never read anything from her, but keep hearing her name coming up constantly, especially in the Why Choose world, and I'm so excited that I read this book. It is about a girl that is taken captive when she is very young from the human world into the Fae world, and they find out that her blood will help them keep control over their shifting, and so the Fae essentially are in 3 different kingdoms, and they all shift into different creatures, and the kingdom that we are in are wolf shifters, and unfortunately every night on the full moon they have lost complete control over their ability to shift and have been cursed, and her blood helps them keep that control. She is found by a group that is trying to figure out what the secret is because they have been withholding this elixir from them, and she is taken captive by them from her previous captors and trying to figure out what it is about her blood that will allow them to keep control over their shifting. This is a Why Choose, but it is not poly, and I liked it. I think that the first book was a lot of setup. I am curious to see how it continues on with a little bit more plot in books 2 and 3, but I liked the world building. I liked getting to know the men and starting to understand all of their relationships with her, and so it got a 3.5-star with me very excited to continue. Then I read Rachel's pick, and that was This Woven Kingdom. Whoa, that is shiny. Okay, let's see if we can tilt this in a way that's not that shiny. This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. This is the first in a young adult fantasy series that I think I put on my spreadsheet as romantasy, but it is a romantasy. I think it's going to definitely be more of a romantasy as the series goes on. This is a Persian-inspired romantasy that I thought the setting was so cool for. We have jinn and humans, and they don't fully get along, but they don't fully hate each other either. The jinn are persecuted even though they're not really supposed to be, and our main character is essentially a chosen one. She has ice in her veins even though she is a jinn of fire, and she is just trying to make ends meet. She's working as a seamstress and as basically a servant. When one day the prince sees her being attacked, he's kind of smitten by her. He wants to know more about her and finds out that she is essentially this chosen one that needs to be killed. It is very insta-lovey, especially on his end, that I did not really love, and it definitely felt a little too slice of life for me. This book moved extremely slowly, and even though it was an easy read and it felt fast because it was an easy read, the pacing itself was very slice of life and very slow. I did like getting some of our friendships and seeing that we may get a more found family, seeing her come into her understanding of what her role is going to be and those dynamics, but I just thought that the romance was not quite it for me, and it was a little bit slow. I do think that there is something at the end that happens so that's going to make the romance much more interesting for me in future books, so I will be continuing, and this book got a 3.5 from me. And then we read Claire's pick, and Claire I had to text and say, okay, what off of your list should I read? Because she had 3 or 4 that I was really interested in, and she told me to read Empire, Flame, and Thorns. It was 5 stars. I had so much fun with this book, and I'm so glad that she told me to pick it up. This is about dragon shifters that have oppressed the Fae, because the Fae originally had oppressed the dragon shifters, and now they're basically getting revenge, and they're beating down the Fae. They're horrible to them because of everything that they did for them in the past. But once every 100 to 150 years, there is a tournament that you can enter, and if you win, you are given freedom and can leave these lands to go live a life of your choosing. Our main character is part of the rebellion, and she thinks that if she can win, she can get out of here, she can learn a little bit more about things outside of their lands and then bring that information back to the rebellion. I had so much fun with it. This was so much fun. The banter between her and Draven was 10 out of 10 incredible. However, if you don't like one-liners, you don't like that kind of banter, this is probably not going to work for you. It is a lot of one-liners, it is a lot of sniping, but I ate up every second of it. I think if you're like a powerless lover, then you could enjoy this. The writing definitely took a little time to settle in. Those first 4 or 5 chapters were kind of rough, but once it did, I ended up liking her as a main character. She has emotion magic, and she has to deal with a lot of the repercussions of what kind of magic that she has. Draven was surly and doesn't want her to succeed in this trial and trying to sabotage her at every turn. I just loved their dynamics. The ending of this was like mind blown. I cannot wait for the sequel, and thankfully the sequel is coming out at the end of February, so I will be able to pick it up very soon. But yeah, 5 stars on vibes. This was so much fun. So if you're just looking for a vibey book and you like enemies to lovers banter, I would recommend this. Then we're going to talk about 2 books at once because I read Tori's pick, which was Fate and Furies by Helen Scher. This is the 3rd book in the Legends of Thesmar series, but later in the month I also read Storm and Shadows, which is the 4th and final book in the Legends of Thesmar series. So really quickly, we'll talk about this series as a whole. It's following Althea, who wants nothing more than to be a warrior. She wants to hold a blade, she wants to fight for her country, but there's a prophecy that says that a woman that touches a blade will bring ruin to everyone, and there are these like shadow creatures that are trying to get into their realm. She ends up getting approved to train but not fully be a warrior of Thesmar, and her mentor is Wilder Hawthorne, who is one of the like most renowned warriors. It's mentor mentee. Althea is very spunky. It's kind of reluctant lovers at first. It's just fun. I think Althea read a little bit young to me in the beginning, but she definitely started to grow up, and I enjoyed her character a lot more as we went. The 3rd book in the series is probably one of my favorites in the series. It has a good balance of romance and plot and kind of moving forward this epic scope, and the thing that happens at the very end of this book is so much fun and so cool. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4-star, but unfortunately Shadow and Storms, which is the finale, wrapped up a little too quickly and neat in a bow for me. The conflicts just seemed to not be high enough stakes. The battle seemed to take too long to get to be kind of anticlimactic. So while I liked it, it wasn't the finale that I wanted it to be. Do I think it's still worth it to read the whole series? Yes, absolutely. But I wish this finale had been just a little bit more punchy, and so it got a 3.5 star. All right, we gotta roll up the sleeves. This is taking a lot longer than I wanted it to, so I gotta hop to. Okay, then we read Lightlark, which was Emmy's pick. This is a young adult romantasy with trials. It's a world where every 100 years they have this showcase essentially to try to break curses of all of these different people in these lands. They have curses of like not being able to go out at night or dying on their 21st birthday, and she does not have magic, but she is their queen, and so she is going to go to this showcase and try to break all of the curses. It is a love triangle. I really found Grimm to be very, very interesting, but wanted more page time with them. The other part of the love triangle I liked, but wasn't completely obsessed with, but he definitely got more page time. But I was curious about how book 2 was gonna go. Then kind of when I read the ending and heard a little bit more about it, I'm curious, but I'm not sold on it, so I'm not 100% sure if I will be continuing. I did like the end of this. I liked the twists and turns and how everything shaped up, but it just feels like a long commitment when I think this book was generally okay. It got a 3.5 star, I think. Yes, a 3.5 star. I enjoyed it. I just wasn't completely obsessed with it. I think if you want like a young adult romantasy that is fun, it is unique, but doesn't require too much thought process, this will be a good one for you. It seems like something that I would have loved back when I was a teenager, but doesn't hit quite as hard now because I can't relate to some of the things that she was dealing with as well. Then I read Diavola for Lexi's pick. This one I loved. I gave it a 4.5 star and had so much fun with this horror book. It is kind of haunted house, a little bit demony possession story, and it was just so creepy. It's about a family that really doesn't like each other that all decides to go for some reason and stay in. I think it's an Italian villa, but this villa is actually haunted. It does a really good job of staying really creepy and like slowly getting creepier and creepier and creepier while also not doing anything too out of the box and too fast. I do think that the pacing in the very beginning was a little bit slow for me, but as we continued, I could not put it down. I wanted to know what was happening, and I was like, oh, that is just weird, that is just creepy, but like it wasn't gross, it was just creepy. The family in this was absolutely horrible, so if you like a dysfunctional family, this is going to be the book for you. I am so glad that I read this, even though I was absolutely terrified of it, and when she told me to read it, I was like, are you sure? But I ended up thoroughly enjoying it. Then I read Kitty's pick, which was Angel's Blood by Nalini Singh. This is an old school 2000s romantasy that kind of set the stage and I think was a huge inspiration for Sarah J Maas for Crescent City, and I can definitely see that. It's following Elena, who is a vampire hunter, and she is enlisted by the angels who kind of rule this city to help find another angel, and she is very reluctant to do this. She doesn't want anything to do with the angels, she doesn't want anything to do with the vampires, she just wants to do her job and go home. But when a archangel calls, You answer. It's a little murder mystery. It definitely is very like snarky banter of the early 2000s. It is a little bit smuttier and a little bit more like sex focused than I personally preferred, but it made sense in the context of the story. I liked the murder mystery aspect of it. I liked their relationship. So I gave this one a 4-star. It was just fun, good vibes. Do I think I will continue? I'm not really sure. It's like a 19-20 book series, and I just don't know that I was quite invested enough to continue for that long. It felt like it wrapped up nicely and I don't have to continue, but I did really enjoy this. I had a lot of fun with it, and I think if you want something like Crescent City, but you're just not really sure where to go, this is a good option. Then we found another favorite, and that was Mariana's pick, which was Flawless by Elsie Silver. I think I'm going to be living in my cowboy romance era. I ate this book up. I read it in a single day. I cried, I laughed, I had the best time with this. It's following Rhett, who is a bull rider, and his family just doesn't really want him to do this, but he's like, it's my passion, it's what I want to do. He has been getting a lot of sponsorships, and that's helping pay for the family's farm, when he kind of screws up and ends up getting taken off of a bunch of sponsor lists, and so his talent agency sends him a babysitter to make sure that he stays out of trouble. Summer has just graduated law school, and she doesn't really want to go babysit Rhett. He's actually a crush of hers from when she was a teenager, but she wants to prove herself to her dad, so she agrees to do it anyway. And this is just, I loved it so much. It was so good. I think I loved it so much that I don't really know how to talk about it, but I think that their banter was really, really good. There were such sweet moments in here. I had the best time. Was this right book, right moment? I don't know, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Elsie Silver, I think, puts crack in her cowboy romances, so I will absolutely be continuing in the series. I've heard that Heartless is even better than Flawless, so I think I'm just going to be unalived when I read that. Okay, then we're moving out of Booktuber favorites and into just a couple of general books that I read this month. Actually, I think there was just only one general book that I read this month, not for a vlog, but that was Onyx Storm. Yes, this is the month that I read Onyx Storm. I have on my War College sweatshirt, and yeah, did I read this book or did it destroy me? I don't need to tell you what Fourth Wing is about. This is the 3rd book in the Fourth Wing series. If you haven't read it, if you don't know what it is, then I think you've been living under a rock for the last 2 years, because this series is everywhere. I stood out in the cold at 9 o'clock in the morning to make sure that I had a copy of this because my Amazon copy was delayed, but I had a really, really good time with it. I did give this a 5-star after kind of sitting and thinking on it. I think it was a 4.5 rounded up. There were some issues that I had with just the general pacing overall. It felt like a lot happening all the time and we never breathed, but also I still loved the characters. I love the world. I love the banter and the dragons, and all of that is incredible. I think that she does a really good job with continuing on in the politics. Some of the like world building aspects that we got in this I thought were incredible. The ending I'm still sitting on. The ending I'm not really sure how I feel about. It's a cliffhanger, but it felt kind of abrupt at the same time, but I'm glad that she went where she did. I think that it absolutely had to be done, and I cannot wait to see what's going to happen in the 4th book. If you've read this series, then I would continue. Like, it's absolutely a recommend. This one feels more like Fourth Wing than Iron Flame did. Iron Flame was definitely a little more for the fantasy girlies. This one leans back into the romance again, and I had the best time with it. Then we started my One Shelf at a Time series, which is where I'm going to be randomly picking shelves and trying to read down my TBR one shelf at a time. So if you have not seen that video, I will leave it up here for you guys to check out. But on that shelf, I had several really good romantasy books, one of which was Avalon Tower by C. N. Crawford. This one was gifted to me by Olivia, so thank you so much to Olivia, and is Camelot inspired, set in our world, about a world where the Fae have essentially come from the Fae realm and are trying to take over our world. They've already come into France, and our main character is just on vacation. She's just minding her own business when she gets caught up in them trying to get out, to smuggle out some demi-Fae, and ends up realizing that she may not be what she thought she was, and she has a power that the rebellion needs in order to fight the Fae Kingdom. This is a Fae Spy Academy, which I really enjoyed, like the school academy setting. I thought that the relationship between the two main characters was fun. There were some moments that I didn't love about it, but also I think that their banter was just, like I said, really fun, and I just had a silly, goofy, fun time with this. It kind of gives me like Zodiac Academy vibes in the style, and so I think if you're a fan of that series, you might like this one. The Camelot aspect of it almost felt like it didn't really need to be there, but I also didn't mind it. It just felt like a little bit of a gimmick, so I could have done without it, but overall it was still fun. I gave this one did I give it a 3.5 or a 4-star? My spreadsheet says that I gave it a 3-star, but I honestly think that it is at least a 3.5 star, so I'm going to bump it up just a little bit. Then I read the fourth and final book in the Kingdom of Lies series, which is A Queen This Fierce and Deadly by Stasia Stark. This is following Priska, who is one of the people that still has magic. You shouldn't have magic after your like birth until you're like 21 years old when they give you a little portion of your magic back, but for some reason she still has all of her magic despite being dedicated to the gods, and she's trying to keep that really, really quiet because if she doesn't, they will come for her and her family. She's been dreaming of this green-eyed guy but doesn't really know anything about him when one day she meets him and he says, I will help protect you, I will keep your secret, but you have to help me in return. And she ends up helping them sneak into a castle. I really enjoyed the first 3 books in the series. The third book I read a little too long ago, so when I went to pick this one up I was like, wait, who are all of these people? The third book ends on a huge cliffhanger, and so I expected this one to really kind of focus on what that cliffhanger was and take some time to resolve it, but just like Storm and Shadows, it resolved it at the drop of a hat. And so I was like, why? There's no consequences if it's that easy. And so I did struggle a little bit with that. In the end, this one just felt like it moved at a snail's pace. The romance felt lackluster to me because it was already established, but I missed some of that sweet banter, and I wasn't just completely obsessed with the characters anymore. It felt really slow. The ending battle felt very anticlimactic and was this huge battle scene, but I didn't care about it because I didn't remember half of the characters. And so I don't know if this was me reading it too long after the third one, but I've also heard from people that read them back to back that this one was just not it for them. So it actually got a 2.5 star, which is really sad. Do I still think the series is worth it? Yes, I would give it a try if you're interested, but this last one just did not do it for me. And a lot of these series finales I'm finding are just not quite hitting for me in the way that I want, and I don't know if that's a me problem or if it's just the books that I'm reading. I also read A Crown of Light and Shadows by G.K. DeRosa, and this is a very Fourth Wing coded book. I was reading it thinking this feels kind of like Fourth Wing. Wait, that's similar to Fourth Wing, and then I went and read the reviews when I was done and was like, yep, everybody thinks this is very Fourth Wing coded. So if you've just read Onyx Storm, maybe give it a little time before you pick this up, but if you're also just dying for more that is similar-esque to Fourth Wing, then maybe give this a try. It is set in a world where there are kin, which are basically humans or non-magic people, and they're in servitude to the Fae, and in return the Fae protect them from all of these monsters that live in their woods. She's grown up with a farmer. He was her adoptive father. He's taught her to fight, and she knows that on her 20th birthday she is going to be given to one of the Fae Lord's houses, and she will have to take care of his house. She'll have to turn down the bed or maybe even warm it, and she doesn't want anything to do with that, but she's willing to at least go and try to do this in order to protect her adoptive father. The Fae Lord shows up and he's like, you're mine, let's go. Something happens and another guy shows up and's like, nope, I'm the professor of this really important academy that helps train warriors of the light Fae to fight against the dark Fae, and you have been chosen, so you're coming with me. And she ends up in this academy training to be a warrior. She doesn't really have any magic. She's never thought that she had magic, and she's just kind of thrust into this. It's got Shadow Daddy, it's got Fae Fighting Academy, it's got magical creatures and bonding to magical creatures, it's got Chosen One, so very similar in a lot of aspects, but different enough that I had fun with it. I ended up giving this one a 3.5, 4 star. I thought that the banter was really, really good. There were definitely some moments where I was like, do we have to say that over and over and over again, or do we have to put it like that? Why are we talking about this right now? So there was some silly, goofy stuff to it as well, but I just had fun. Like, I just let myself vibe with it. So if you're looking for a vibes read, maybe try this. Is it something that I'm going to recommend to everybody? No, it's not, but I do think that it was fun and worth giving a try. And last but not least, I read The Reaper by Melissa K. Roark, and then I read the 5th and final book in the Lady of Darkness series, which is Lady of Starfire. The Reaper I felt like was good, but not something that is mandatory for you to read before reading this one. It is Rainer's book and his backstory, and I liked it, but it's a novella, and I don't really love novellas, so I wasn't obsessed with it. Lady of Darkness is following Scarlet, and she is one of the 3 Maidens of Death, or an assassin, and her newest mark is set in the castle. So she's living in the castle trying to find her next mark while also investigating the disappearance of a lot of children, magical children. And I don't really know how to give you a ton more in the synopsis of this, but she meets Riker and he is part of the Fae Guard. He offers to train her. She doesn't want anything to do with it. She's like, I'm better than you, I'm an assassin. He ends up offering to train her anyway. Things spiral from there, and there's like this Fae lands and Prince of the Fae that killed her parents. So there's a lot going on in the first book, but I do think it was really fun for me. This has good world building. It's definitely a more epic scope than it is a romantasy scope, although there is a lot of romantasy in these, more so in the first and second book, and then we get a little bit more established in our couple before it moves on. This fifth and final book I liked. It was definitely the best of all of the finales that I read, but I still thought that it was too slow, and I still thought that it took way too much setup to get to the final battle. It felt like we were wrapping up all of our characters and like all of their relationships, and we weren't actually moving toward anything for some of the book. Soren and Scarlett's relationship is established, so their romance kind of took a backseat to two or three of the other romances, which I actually quite enjoyed. I loved seeing those romances and thought that they were really good and had me swooning at moments. There is a male couple in here that was incredible, but I just needed it to move a little bit faster. So I'm going to be giving it a 4-star. I really enjoyed the romances. I really enjoyed seeing where all of our characters end up. I liked the ending to this. I thought that it wrapped up really, really nicely, and I am glad that I have finally finished this and would recommend this series as a whole. I just think that it felt a little bit too long and was a little bit like drawn out for my personal liking. Okay, so those are all 16 books that I read in the month of January. I had some new favorites, some 5 stars, some incredible reads, and I am so excited to continue this energy into February. I think it's going to be a great reading year for me. Please let me know down in the comments what your favorite read of January was. I absolutely want to know. If you just want to let me know that you were here and hanging out, leave me some kind of cowboy emoji. Leave me a cow down in the comments below for Flawless, which was probably my favorite read of the month. As always, thank you guys so very much for watching and hanging out, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!